Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Practice English Slowly and Clearly. Today, I will make you improve your English skills by one of my practical life tips. Let's get started. When I was young, I truly believed that life was simple. I thought it was always meant to be easy, happy, and comfortable. I never imagined that life could be difficult. Why would I? My father had money, and because of that, I never had to worry about anything. I lived in a beautiful house. I had all the things a young person could want: clothes, phones, games, fast cars, and fancy food. I didn't think about how those things came into my life. I just knew they were there. I didn't study much. I didn't work. I didn't plan. I didn't feel the need to prepare for the future because in my mind, the future would always look like the present, full of comfort and fun. If I saw something nice in a store, a watch, shoes, a new phone, I would tell my father and he would buy it for me without question. I didn't feel thankful. I felt like it was normal. I thought that was just how life worked when you had money. My friends sometimes told me, "You should plan for the future. You should do something meaningful. What will you do later in life?" But I always laughed and said, "Why should I worry? My father has money. My life is already good." I didn't realize how dangerous that thinking was. I didn't understand that I was living in a bubble, a world that looked perfect but wasn't real. Every morning, I woke up late. I would stay in bed for a long time, scrolling through my phone, doing nothing. I had breakfast in bed. I watched TV for hours. Sometimes I would meet my friends. We would go out to eat at the best restaurants in the city. We wore designer clothes. We drove luxury cars. We spent money like it was nothing. Life was fun, and I believed it would always stay that way. I truly thought I had everything, but in truth, I had nothing. I didn't understand the value of money. I didn't know how it was earned. I didn't know the pain of long working hours or the stress of running a business. I didn't care about bills, responsibilities, or effort. All I knew was how to enjoy life, or so I thought. I only looked at today. I never thought about tomorrow. My world was limited to my own comfort, and I didn't even know it. When I wanted to travel, I traveled. When I wanted new shoes, I got them. When I wanted a new phone, I bought the best one. I never looked at the price. I never thought about where the money came from. My father always paid. He never said no. And I never asked how he was doing, how hard his job was, or how much pressure he felt. I just lived my own life, focused only on myself. At that time, I thought I was happy. But now, when I look back, I realize I was lost. I had no purpose, no direction. I had comfort, but no understanding. I had freedom, but no responsibility. I thought life was just about enjoyment, about buying things, eating good food, and having fun. I didn't understand that real happiness doesn't come from those things. Real happiness comes from doing something meaningful, from growing, from working hard, from becoming someone you can be proud of. I didn't know it then, but my father was watching me. He was silent, but he was thinking deeply. He saw that I was wasting my life. He saw that I didn't care about the future. And one day, he decided to change that. He decided to teach me a lesson that I would never forget. It started with a simple conversation, one that felt strange at the time, but would later change my life forever. That was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter where I would finally open my eyes. A chapter where I would learn what life is really about. A chapter where the easy life I once knew would slowly disappear and be replaced with something much more valuable: understanding, growth, responsibility, and strength. Chapter 1. The Life of Comfort. My life was full of comfort. Every morning, I woke up late. There was no alarm clock, no reason to rush. The sunlight would gently shine through the big windows of my room, and I would stretch lazily, knowing there was nothing I needed to do. I didn't have school anymore. I didn't have a job. I didn't have responsibilities. My only job was to enjoy the day. Breakfast was never a problem. It was either brought to my room or prepared for me downstairs. Sometimes pancakes, sometimes eggs and toast, sometimes fruit and juice. Whatever I wanted, it was there. I would eat slowly, in bed or in front of the TV. After breakfast, I would spend hours just watching shows or scrolling through my phone. Time passed easily, and I never thought twice about it. When I went out in style. My closet was full of expensive clothes. I wore designer jackets, polished shoes, and stylish sunglasses. I didn't look at price tags. I just wore what I liked. If I wanted something new, I bought it. Or rather, my father bought it. I never carried cash. I had credit cards, and I never worried about how much I spent. My friends and I loved to go out. We ate at the most expensive restaurants in the city, places with white tablecloths, smart waiters, and long menus. We ordered whatever we wanted: appetizers, drinks, desserts. It didn't matter how much it cost. We laughed loudly, took pictures of our food, and shared them online. Life felt like a party, every day. Cars were another joy in my life. Fast, shiny cars with leather seats and powerful engines. Sometimes I drove, sometimes my friends did. We raced down the roads like kings, windows down, music playing loud. People stared. We loved the attention. We felt important. We felt unstoppable. I didn't think about the future. Why should I? Everything I needed was already in front of me. I had clothes, money, food, cars, and friends. I didn't need to study. I didn't need to work. My father was successful. He had built a business and earned a fortune. I believed that was enough for both of us. I never asked him about his job. I never asked how many hours he worked, how many problems he solved, or how much pressure he felt. I only saw the results: the money, the house, the lifestyle. I thought it was normal. I thought that was just what life looked like when you were lucky. I didn't know that I was blind. I didn't know that I was living in a dream built by someone else's hard work, a dream that could disappear at any moment. When I look back now, I realize something important. I had everything, but I valued nothing. I didn't understand effort. I didn't understand sacrifice. I didn't understand what it meant to work for something, to earn something, to feel proud of yourself. At the time, I thought I was living the perfect life, but I wasn't. I was just floating, not moving forward, not growing. I had comfort, but I had no strength. I had freedom, but I had no direction. I had a full life, but I didn't know who I was. That chapter of my life, the easy life, was fun, yes, but it was also empty. I didn't know it then, but deep down, I was missing something, something big. And soon, life would show me exactly what that was. Chapter 2. A serious talk one afternoon. Something unexpected happened. My father called me into his room. That in itself was not unusual. He was always around, kind and generous. But this time, his voice was different. It was calm, but serious. I felt a small change in the air. Still, I walked in casually, smiling like always, not expecting anything important. "Sit down," he said, without smiling. I paused. Usually, he greeted me with a warm expression, maybe even a joke, but not today. His face was firm, thoughtful, not angry, but not light either. I sat down slowly. I didn't know why, but I suddenly felt a little nervous. I had never seen him like this before. "Yes, father?" I asked, trying to sound relaxed. He didn't answer right away. He looked at me for a moment, as if studying me, not my face, but the person I had become. Then he took a deep breath and began to speak. "You are not a child anymore," he said. I laughed softly. "Of course, father, I'm not a child." But he didn't laugh with me. His serious expression didn't change. "You must start thinking about your future," he said. I smiled again. "Why should I? I have everything I need. You take care of everything. I'm happy." He shook his head gently. "No, my son. You have everything now because I work hard. But life is not always easy. One day things may change. One day I may not be here." His words landed heavily, but I didn't want to believe them. My father was strong, smart, and successful. In my eyes, he was unstoppable. How could anything change? "Don't worry, father," I said, trying to ease the mood. "Nothing will change. Everything will stay the same." But again, he didn't smile. He just looked at me quietly for a long moment. His silence made me uncomfortable, but I still didn't take him seriously. I thought he was just having a bad day, or maybe he was tired from work. "We will see," he said finally. Then he stood up and walked out of the room. I stayed there, confused. What was he trying to say? Why was he so serious? It didn't make sense to me. I didn't want to think about it too much, so I brushed it off and called my friends. We made plans to go out that evening, just like always. That night, we ate at a new restaurant in town. We laughed. We took selfies. We shared pictures of our food, and we talked about trips we wanted to take. I ordered the most expensive steak on the menu without even looking at the price. That was my life. Carefree, easy, fun. I didn't know that everything was about to change. The next morning, I woke up late, like always. I stretched, checked my phone, smiled at the messages from my friends, and got ready to go out again. I wore my best clothes, sprayed my favorite cologne, and walked downstairs. But this time, my father was waiting in the living room. He was sitting on the couch, wearing a serious expression, just like the day before. "Sit down," he said again. I sighed. "Father, I have plans today." He didn't move. "This is more important," he said. I sat down. I noticed the same weight in the air. He looked at me directly. "You must learn about life," he said. I rolled my eyes. "Father, I know about life." He shook his head. "No, you don't." Then he said something strange, something that I didn't expect. "Come with me." He didn't say where we were going. He didn't explain anything, but something in his voice told me not to argue. So I followed him. That morning, I thought I was just going for a drive. I had no idea that my father was about to show me a world that would change everything I believed about life. Chapter 3. A Different World. We got into my father's car. I sat in the front seat, confused and a little annoyed. He still hadn't told me where we were going. He didn't speak. He simply started the engine and began to drive. The silence between us felt heavy. I wanted to ask him what was happening, but something told me to wait. As we drove, I looked out the window. We passed through familiar areas at first, the nice neighborhoods, the clean streets, the coffee shops I often visited with friends. But soon, the scenery began to change. The buildings looked older. The roads were no longer smooth. There were no fancy restaurants or designer shops here. I saw people walking quickly, their faces tired and serious. I saw workers sweeping the streets, bending down again and again with their brooms. I saw street vendors selling food from carts, shouting prices, trying to attract customers. Children were walking barefoot. A man sat on the roadside fixing old shoes, his hands covered in black polish. I had passed through this part of the city before, but I had never really looked. That day, I noticed everything. After a while, my father pulled the car to the side of the road and stopped. We were in a neighborhood I had never visited. The walls were cracked. The buildings were small. The air felt dusty and dry. "Get out," he said. We stepped out of the car. My father pointed to a man standing behind a wooden cart. He was selling fruit. His shirt was soaked in sweat. He had a tired look on his face, but his hands moved quickly. He placed apples and oranges into small plastic bags, counted change, and greeted customers with a polite smile. "Look at him," my father said. "He wakes up before sunrise. He carries this cart himself. He works all day under the hot sun. He doesn't complain. He doesn't give up. He does it every day just to feed his family." I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. I had never looked at someone like that before. I had seen people like him, of course, but I had never really seen them. I had never stopped to think about their lives, their struggles, or their strength. Then my father pointed toward a small shop across the street. Inside, an old woman was sewing clothes by hand. Her back was bent. Her fingers moved slowly but carefully, working with full attention. "She has been doing this for 40 years, he said. "She doesn't earn much, but she works hard every single day. That is how she survives." I watched the woman for a while. She looked tired. Her eyes were small and wrinkled, but she didn't stop. She kept stitching. She didn't look up. She didn't rest. She just worked. "She is older than your grandmother," my father said, "but she still works. Every day." I looked at the fruit seller again, then at the woman. I felt something strange inside me, something I had never felt before. It was not pity. It was not sadness. It was respect, and maybe even shame. My father turned to me and said, "Do you see now? Life is not easy for everyone." I nodded slowly, still watching the people around us. This world was new to me, but it had always been there. I had just never paid attention. "You have never worked a single day in your life," he continued. "You have never struggled. You have only taken. You have never given." His words were sharp but true. I couldn't deny them. As we got back into the car, I didn't speak. My mind was full of new thoughts. Images of the fruit seller and the sewing woman stayed with me. Their tired eyes, their strong hands, their quiet determination. Something had shifted inside me. For the first time, I began to see life not just as something to enjoy, but something to understand. Chapter 4. The Truth About Work. We drove in silence for a long time. I looked out the window, but my mind wasn't on the streets anymore. I kept thinking about the fruit seller, about the old woman sewing, about the tired faces, the hard hands, the simple food, the worn-out shoes. I had lived in the same city my whole life, but it was like I was seeing it for the first time. My father didn't say much. He just drove. I could tell he was giving me space to think. And for once, I didn't feel like checking my phone. I didn't feel like calling my friends. I didn't want to laugh or scroll or distract myself. I just sat there, thinking. After a while, my father stopped the car again. This time, we were in front of a large glass building. It was tall, clean, and modern. I recognized it immediately. It was his office. I had been there before, but only for short visits. Usually, I only went when I needed money or when I wanted to ask him for something. I had never stayed long. I never cared about what happened inside. "Come," he said again. We walked through the glass doors. Inside, everything was busy. Phones were ringing. People were typing. Others were walking quickly from one desk to another. The office was full of energy, but not the fun kind, the serious kind. I noticed that everyone looked focused. Some looked stressed. Some looked tired. But they were all working. We went up to the top floor and entered his office. It was big, but not fancy. There was a large desk, 2 chairs, and shelves full of papers and books. My father sat down and looked at me. "Do you know what I do every day?" he asked. I shrugged. "You work," I said quietly. He nodded. "Yes, but do you know how hard I work? Do you know what it takes to run this company? Every day, I wake up early. I meet with clients. I make difficult decisions. I solve problems. I deal with stress. I take risks. I do all of this, not just for me, but for you." I didn't say anything. I looked around the office. I had never truly noticed the people here before. Some were sitting at desks, writing reports. Others were answering phones or preparing presentations. They looked tired, focused, busy. I suddenly felt out of place, like I didn't belong. I had always seen the results of my father's work, the cars, the house, the lifestyle. But I had never seen the work itself. I had never thought about how much effort it took. I had never asked about the sleepless nights or the business risks. I had never once said, "Thank you." My father opened a drawer and pulled out a small black notebook. He placed it on the desk in front of me. "From tomorrow," he said, "you will work here." I blinked. "Me? Work here?" He nodded. "Yes. You will start from the bottom. You will learn." I laughed a little, thinking he was joking. "But I don't need to work." He looked at me with serious eyes. "Yes, you do. Because one day I won't be here. And then what will you do? You must learn how to earn, how to lead, how to build." His words hit me hard. I had never thought about life without my father. I had never imagined a future where he wasn't there to give me what I needed. I had never thought about responsibility. I wanted to speak, but no words came out. Deep down, I knew he was right. And even though I was scared, even though I didn't feel ready, I also knew something had to change. The next day would be the start of a new journey, one I had never expected to take. Chapter 5. First day at work. The next morning, everything felt different. For the first time in years, I woke up early. My eyes were heavy, and my body didn't want to move. I was used to sleeping late, to staying in bed without a care. But this morning, I couldn't. I had work to do. I stood in front of the mirror, trying to decide what to wear. I wasn't sure what was appropriate. I didn't want to look too rich or too relaxed. Eventually, I chose simple clothes: a plain shirt, clean trousers, and quiet shoes. Nothing flashy. I didn't even wear my usual expensive watch. Something told me it didn't belong in this new part of my life. When I went downstairs, my father was already at the table. He looked up and gave me a small nod. He didn't say much, just handed me a small brown bag. "Your lunch," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "Lunch? Can't I eat at a restaurant?" He shook his head. "Workers bring their own lunch. Today, you are a worker." His words were simple, but they stayed with me. We left the house and drove to his office in silence. I wasn't nervous, but I wasn't excited either. I just didn't know what to expect. This was a world I had never entered before. The world of work, of effort, of structure and responsibility. When we arrived, my father didn't take me to his large office on the top floor. Instead, he led me through a side door into a smaller, less decorated section of the building. The floors weren't shiny. The walls were plain. The lighting was soft and practical, not elegant. This was where real work happened. We entered a room with many desks. People were already sitting at them, typing, reading, checking papers. Nobody looked up when we walked in. Everyone was focused. A tall man in glasses stood up and came over to us. He looked serious and professional. His shirt was neatly tucked in. His hair was combed exactly in place. "This is Mr. William," my father said. "You will work under him." Then, without another word, he left. Mr. William looked at me. He didn't smile. "Come," he said simply. I followed him through a few rows of desks until we reached a small table in the corner. There was a chair, a stack of papers, and a pen. "This is your desk," he said. "You will check these documents. Look for mistakes in the numbers. Mark them clearly. And work quickly." I stared at the pile. It was huge. "All of them?" I asked, trying to hide my surprise. He nodded. "Yes, and don't waste time." He walked away without another word. I sat down and picked up the first sheet. At first, it looked easy, just rows of numbers, dates, and totals. But after 20 minutes, my head started to hurt. All the numbers began to look the same. I had to read carefully, again and again, to make sure I wasn't missing anything. I was used to looking at screens, not printed papers. My eyes felt tired. An hour passed, then 2. My back began to ache from sitting straight. My hand hurt from writing. I looked around. Everyone else was still working. Nobody was talking. Nobody was taking a break. This wasn't like school or hanging out with friends. This was serious. At lunchtime, I opened my bag. Inside was a sandwich, a small apple, and a bottle of water. Simple, no fancy packaging, no waiters or menus, just food. I ate quietly, thinking about my old life. I missed it, but I also felt something I had never felt before, a strange sense of respect. Respect for the people around me, respect for the effort they gave every day, and maybe just a little respect for myself. I didn't know it then, but this was the beginning of a transformation. I was no longer just the rich man's son. I was now a beginner at life, at work, and at learning what it really means to earn your place in the world. Chapter 6: Lessons from the Workplace. The afternoon was harder than the morning. After lunch, my body felt even more tired. My back ached, my eyes were sore, and my hand was cramping from holding the pen for so long. I looked at the remaining stack of papers. There were still so many. I wanted to sigh, to complain, to get up and leave, but I didn't. Something inside me stopped me. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was fear, or maybe, just maybe, it was the first sign of discipline. I stayed seated. I kept working. After a while, Mr. William came by to check my progress. He picked up a few pages and studied them. His face didn't change. Then he found a mistake. Wrong total, he said flatly. Do it again. I felt my face grow warm. I wanted to explain. I wanted to defend myself. But I knew he was right. I had rushed. I had been careless. I nodded quietly, took the papers back, and began again. This time, I went slower. I read each number carefully. I checked and rechecked. It took longer, but it felt better. I wanted to do it right. As the hours passed, I started noticing the people around me. Before, I had never cared about office workers. I thought their jobs were boring. I thought their lives were small. But now, sitting among them, I felt something very different. I saw how focused they were. I saw how tired they looked, but they didn't stop. I saw one man rubbing his forehead while reading a long document. I saw a woman typing quickly, stopping only to take a sip of cold tea. I heard phones ringing, printers humming, papers being shuffled. No one was laughing. No one was relaxing. Everyone was working. They were not doing this for fun. They were doing this to survive, to pay rent, to buy food, to support their families. And they did it every day, not just once like me. It made me feel small, but it also made me feel something I had never felt before. Admiration. By the end of the day, I was exhausted. I didn't realize how heavy office work could be. I had always imagined it was easy, just sitting in a chair, typing on a keyboard. But now I knew. It wasn't just the work that was tiring. It was the routine, the pressure, the quiet demand to do it right, to do it fast, to keep going even when you wanted to stop. When the clock finally struck 5, people began packing their things. They didn't smile. They didn't talk much. Most of them looked tired. But I saw something in their eyes, a kind of strength, a quiet pride. I stood up slowly, stretched my sore back, and picked up my bag. I walked out of the office and found my father waiting for me downstairs, just like he said he would be. He looked at me and smiled softly. Tired? He asked. I nodded. Good, he said. Just one word, but it carried so much meaning. We didn't speak much during the ride home, but I knew he was proud. And for the first time, I felt that I had done something worth being proud of. That night, I didn't go out with friends. I didn't scroll endlessly through my phone. I didn't feel like showing off or buying anything new. Instead, I lay in bed and thought about my day. Really thought about it. I had worked. I had failed. I had tried again. And I had finished. It wasn't a perfect day, but it was real. It was mine. And that meant more than anything money had ever given me. Chapter 7. A new feeling the next morning. My alarm rang early again. My eyes didn't want to open. My body felt stiff. My hands were sore from all the writing I had done the day before. A small voice in my head whispered, "Just sleep a little more." But I pushed it away. I had work to do. I got out of bed and dressed in silence. There was no music playing, no excitement, just a quiet determination that had started to grow inside me. I didn't know exactly what was happening to me, but I could feel it. I was changing. When I walked downstairs, my father was already sitting at the table. He looked up, gave me a small nod, and said only one word, "Good." That was all. But that one word felt different. It wasn't just about waking up early. It was about effort. It was about responsibility. And maybe, just maybe, it was about respect. When I arrived at the office, Mr. William was waiting for me. As usual, he didn't smile. "You were slow yesterday," he said. "Today, work faster." I wanted to say something, maybe defend myself, maybe explain, but I didn't. I just nodded and sat at my desk. The papers were already waiting. So were the numbers. So was the pressure. My back still hurt, and my head wasn't ready, but I began. Slowly, carefully, I checked the numbers. I marked the mistakes. I organized the files. I didn't stop to check my phone. I didn't look around. I just worked. By lunchtime, I had finished the stack. I brought the papers to Mr. William. He looked through them quietly. I stood there waiting, nervous. Finally, he looked up. "Fewer mistakes today," he said. "Better." Just one word. Better. But it felt good. It felt better than buying a new phone. It felt better than eating at a fancy restaurant. It felt better than 100 likes on a photo. Because this time, I had earned it. It made me feel small, but it also made me feel something I had never felt before. Admiration. By the end of the day, I was exhausted. I didn't realize how heavy office work could be. I had always imagined it was easy, just sitting in a chair, typing on a keyboard. But now I knew. It wasn't just the work that was tiring. It was the routine, the pressure, the quiet demand to do it right, to do it fast, to keep going even when you wanted to stop. When the clock finally struck 5, people began packing their things. They didn't smile. They didn't talk much. Most of them looked tired. But I saw something in their eyes, a kind of strength, a quiet pride. I stood up slowly, stretched my sore back, and picked up my bag. I walked out of the office and found my father waiting for me downstairs, just like he said he would be. He looked at me and smiled softly. "Tired?" he asked. I nodded. "Good," he said. Just one word, but it carried so much meaning. We didn't speak much during the ride home, but I knew he was proud. And for the first time, I felt that I had done something worth being proud of. That night, I didn't go out with friends. I didn't scroll endlessly through my phone. I didn't feel like showing off or buying anything new. Instead, I lay in bed and thought about my day. Really thought about it. I had worked. I had failed. I had tried again. And I had finished. It wasn't a perfect day, but it was real. It was mine. And that meant more than anything money had ever given me. Chapter 7. A new feeling the next morning. My alarm rang early again. My eyes didn't want to open. My body felt stiff. My hands were sore from all the writing I had done the day before. A small voice in my head whispered, "Just sleep a little more." But I pushed it away. I had work to do. I got out of bed and dressed in silence. There was no music playing, no excitement, just a quiet determination that had started to grow inside me. I didn't know exactly what was happening to me, but I could feel it. I was changing. When I walked downstairs, my father was already sitting at the table. He looked up, gave me a small nod, and said only one word, "Good." That was all. But that one word felt different. It wasn't just about waking up early. It was about effort. It was about responsibility. And maybe, just maybe, it was about respect. When I arrived at the office, Mr. William was waiting for me. As usual, he didn't smile. "You were slow yesterday," he said. "Today, work faster." I wanted to say something, maybe defend myself, maybe explain. But I didn't. I just nodded and sat at my desk. The papers were already waiting. So were the numbers. So was the pressure. My back still hurt, and my head wasn't ready, but I began. Slowly, carefully, I checked the numbers. I marked the mistakes. I organized the files. I didn't stop to check my phone. I didn't look around. I just worked. By lunchtime, I had finished the stack. I brought the papers to Mr. William. He looked through them quietly. I stood there waiting, nervous. Finally, he looked up. "Fewer mistakes today," he said. "Better." Just one word. Better. But it felt good. It felt better than buying a new phone. It felt better than eating at a fancy restaurant. It felt better than 100 likes on a photo. Because this time, I had earned it. During lunch, I sat with the other workers. I didn't eat alone like the day before. They were talking about simple things: their children, the cost of groceries, a new bus route in the city. They laughed, they shared food, they joked about Mr. Williams' serious face. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't glamorous, but it felt real. I didn't speak much, I mostly listened, but I felt like I was part of something. For the first time, I didn't see these people as just workers. I saw them as human beings, strong, tired, honest people. And I felt honored to sit beside them. In the afternoon, Mr. William gave me more work. "Let's see if you can handle this," he said. It was more than yesterday, harder too. The numbers were longer. The details were more complex. I wanted to complain. I wanted to say it was too much. But instead, I nodded. I sat down and started again. My eyes hurt. My hands ached. My neck was stiff. But I didn't stop. I focused. I worked. When the day ended, Mr. William walked by my desk. He picked up the papers and looked through them quickly. Then he paused, looked at me, and said, "Not bad." 2 simple words. But they meant everything. I packed up my things and walked outside. My father was waiting in the car. He didn't ask, "How was your day?" He didn't need to. He could see it in my face. I was tired, yes, but I was also proud. He smiled and said, "Tired?" I nodded. "Good," he replied again. And this time, I understood what that word really meant. It didn't mean weakness. It meant growth. It meant effort. It meant that I was finally starting to become the man he hoped I would be. Chapter 8. Becoming my father's son, days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Every morning, I woke up early. Every day, I dressed simply, packed my lunch, and went to work. I no longer needed my father to wake me up. I no longer complained about the pain in my back or the tiredness in my hands. I had stopped looking for comfort. I had started searching for progress. The work wasn't easy. Some days were hard. Some days were boring. There were mistakes. There were long hours. But something had changed inside me. I didn't give up. I kept going. At first, I worked under Mr. William. He was strict, serious, and honest. He never smiled, but he also never lied. When I was slow, he told me. When I made mistakes, he showed me. And when I improved, he said, "Good job." Just 2 words. But those 2 words meant more to me than any expensive gift I had ever received in my old life. Slowly, I got better. I made fewer mistakes. I worked faster. I started understanding how things worked, how the company ran, how teams worked together, how small details created big results. I saw how every number, every report, every signature meant something. I used to think business was all about money, but now I saw it was about people, about choices, about building something that mattered. I also started watching my father more closely. Before, I only saw the house he bought, the car he drove, the things he gave me. But now I watched the man himself. How he managed his team, how he handled pressure, how he made hard decisions. He was calm, wise, and strong. I used to think he just had money, but now I understood. He had built it, step by step, through years of work and pain. and I began to respect him more than I ever had. One evening, my father called me into his office. I sat down across from him, just like I did that first day months ago. But this time, something felt different. He looked at me for a long moment, then said quietly, "You've changed." I didn't know how to answer. I just looked back at him and nodded. "At first," he said, "you were lazy. You didn't care about work. You didn't know anything about life. But now you do." I nodded again, because he was right. Then he opened a drawer and took out a small silver key. He placed it on the table and slid it toward me. "This is your office," he said. I looked at the key in shock. "My office?" He nodded. "You're ready for more responsibility. You've worked hard. Now it's time to take the next step." I held the key in my hand. It was small, cold, and metal, but it felt heavy. Not just because it opened a door, but because it represented something bigger: trust. The next day, I moved into my new office. It wasn't big, it wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I had my own desk, my own phone, my own tasks. I wasn't just another worker now. I was learning how to lead. It wasn't easy. I made mistakes. I had bad days. But I didn't give up. I worked. I listened. I learned. And slowly, I started to see the world not with a boy's eyes, but with a man's heart. Looking back, I sometimes laugh at my old self. The boy who thought life was all about spending money, driving fast cars, and waking up late. That boy didn't understand anything. Now I know the truth. Life is not about luxury. It's about effort. It's about growth. It's about building something with your own hands. My father taught me that. Not with words, but with experience. And now, finally, I am proud to be his son. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.